So what is gesture drawing? Now, gesture drawing is all about capturing the essence of a pose and capturing the feeling of movement in just a quick few lines. It is not about perfect anatomy or details. It's about feeling the energy and flow of your subject. Imagine someone is running, yeah, or someone has this pose. You don't need to draw every muscle, like when they are in motion. You just need to see how the character is leaning forward and the swinging of the arm. That is actually what gesture is all about. So if we are drawing this character and we're actually employing the use of gesture, first of all, we'll use simple shapes, and then we'll try to get the pose. Main things we are going to focus on are the swing, the motion and the flow of the pose, and we are going to try to achieve this in very few lines as possible. It's actually not looking good. It's actually not looking good. But basically, you've seen how I've used simple lines. That's terrible. You've seen how I've just used these quick simple lines to achieve the basic pose of this character, and this is what gesture drawing is all about. And this is important because it serves as a foundation for doing dynamic and believable figures, and it helps you to avoid stiff, lifeless drawings and helps you inject some personality into your work. Because most times you could actually, with gesture drawings, you could actually exaggerate the pose of the character a bit. But personally, for me, when I'm doing gesture drawing and I'm doing something like this, I always have this strong itch to detail a bit, and that is fine, to be honest. But most times you just go to focus on what you're trying to achieve and get like several poses and just try to get their basic flow and movement. So you could just draw something like this as much as possible. You could do 10, you could do 15, 20. Just it serves as a quick warm-up too. One of the core principles of doing gesture drawing is that you should try to observe big shapes. Let's say I'm drawing this Chris Bumstead now. One thing I have to focus on and note down is that I shouldn't try to get bogged down with like all the details of his muscles and veins and whatever. I try to look for big shapes, the major shapes that make up the entire figure, how these major shapes relate to each other. So these shapes are usually the torso, the head, the torso, and the limbs. Those are the big major shapes, that the major mass or the major shape that makes this pose achievable. Basically with this I've achieved, you could just do a box for the head. Basically with this I've achieved the pose, and I can move from there. I simplify a big pose like this, and I just use a simple shapes, these simple curved lines, and to represent it. So that is one of the principle. You use big shapes, so you could use circles, you could use squares, like to represent these parts. That's what I do. Usually it's not like the core principle. Usually they just use, when you're doing gesture drawing, they just use these CSL lines. So this CSL is what will make it will make things flow better when you're drawing. So you mustn't use CSL, like it's just it's just a simplification for what is described as all these lines that I'm using over here. the next thing is you should try to capture movement and weight of the figures. So what this means here is that you should try to be observant and ask yourself questions on where the weight of the figures is being placed. So for instance, now with this character swinging the javelin, this man swinging the javelin, you have to ask yourself, what is his body doing? Is his body leaning? Is his body twisting? Is his body stretching? Yeah, so we are seeing here that he's leaning his body a bit backwards, right? His torso is leaning backwards a bit because he's trying to gather is it momentum now, so that he can be able to throw the javelin far. So what we are trying to do here is we make that observation. Once we make that observation, we have to we have to be conscious of that, so that we know where his body is balancing. Usually you shouldn't but you should try to be much more free with gesture drawing. So like, try not to use eraser a lot, but I suck sometimes, so I don't care. I use eraser when I'm doing my study. I have I have tendency for perfectionism, so I use the eraser whenever I can, if I feel like. So yeah, and we've captured the pose, we've captured his body with just these quick lines, just quick lines. Yeah, with just these quick lines we've captured the essence of the pose. Obviously it can be refined when you're adding more detail, but yeah, this is what I think about whenever I'm trying to do my gesture studies. And one last thing is that you should try to keep it loose and fast, but I honestly don't stick to this rule. So what this means is that you could give yourself a timer and say, like, in 5 minutes time, like in 30 seconds I'll achieve this pose, or in 45 seconds I achieve this pose, or you could set like 20 different poses and then give yourself 1 minute or 5 minutes or 45 seconds. But I personally don't do this because I don't know, I like to enjoy myself whenever I'm doing all these studies, and I'm already trying to make money from art, and whenever I'm trying to do studies to take time with my art, and then I have to be strict with myself again, like, it just makes me feel not fully enjoy the process. And I like enjoying the process whenever I'm doing studies like this. So yes, I could have a timer in my head, but I give myself enough time. So I could say I'll finish this gesture sketch within 3 to 5 minutes, but I'll just keep that in my head. But if I exceed 3 or 5 minutes, and that is also cool, I don't try to be so strict or rugged with myself. I just know that with each drawing and each practice, I'm getting better. But that is just the things you should, well, not you should, you can note. You focus on the line of action, observe big shapes, the weight of movements, which is all about where the character is balancing. Yeah, his hips resting. If he's sitting down, is the character's hips resting somewhere, or if he's standing or leaning or trying to throw something, like, where's the force coming from, where's the momentum going to come from? So these are things to keep in mind when you're doing gesture drawing. Gesture drawing is so fun because there's no strict rules about it. You're just trying to get what you're looking at in just a very simple pose. It could be perfect, it could not be, but you are just improving your ability to understand the flow of the movement of a character, of your figure drawing, of your figures. So I'm just going to briefly talk about my introduction to gesture drawing, how I started gesture drawing. My first introduction to basically improving in art or how to draw figures was with Caldwell, I think that's his name. Caldwell action cartooning. My art teacher in school had this book, and he actually gave me this book to photocopy, action cartooning, and this was my first introduction to drawing with gestures. And one thing that really helped me was, you see this thing right here where he used this simplified skeleton. He used simplified skeleton in this book. He used simplified skeleton to draw characters, and that is what helped me whenever I drew, like using stickmen. First of all, like in drawing anything, right, if you're like a complete beginner, one thing to note is simple shapes, right? Simple shapes, right? That is your squares, your triangles, your circles, your cylinders, yeah, or your spheres, your trapezoids. The reason why you try to understand simple shapes whenever you are learning to draw or whenever you're trying to improve is simply because they help with simplification. And whenever you are drawing a complex pose, simplification is very important because it just helps you to deconstruct that pose. So for instance, this dude over here that we are drawing with the quarter staff, so instead of like trying to figure out the complexity with his shadows, with the lighting and with everything, there's all this information around this character that can make him ideally confusing or make it quite tricky whenever I'm trying to draw. But simply because of simple shapes, I could look at his head as a square. Then I've gotten this simple shape. Use like a triangle or wedge shape for the hand, and I've deconstructed this guy's pose. I mean, it's not accurate, but you know, using simple shapes has helped me simplify this entire character. You know, I'm not worrying about whether or not his head is accurate. I'm just capturing the pose, and then later on I could go in, you know, reduce the opacity or whatever with my eraser. That if I'm sketching on my sketchbook, use my eraser and then starts, you know, following these simple shapes that I've used to actually get a much more detailed pose, a much more detailed drawing, figure drawing. So simplification is very important. Like simple shapes is very important because it helps you with construction and it helps you with gesture drawing. Because whenever I do my gesture drawing, most times I actually apply these construction lines, these construction shapes. Another thing too that is important is learning gesture drawing. And with gesture drawing, we are just using these simple lines to achieve complex poses. That's a bit lame, A very poor use of space, by the way. This is what is going to help your figure. And the last thing is structure. And with structure, it's a bit more complex than the first two, because we refer to a lot of things using planes. This is all about planes. So understanding simple shapes is very important, because when I talk about breaking things down and how this Ben Caldwell, when I talk about how his art actually helped me, using simple shapes to deconstruct poses is what helped me, because the way I approach my own construction, my own gesture drawing, is that I add a little bit of structure to it, or I add a little bit of these shapes into it most times, so that I can achieve what I want when I feel like these CSL lines are not doing it for me. So you see how he used a simple drawing of the skeleton to achieve this pose. What I started with was that I used, you see that he, like, let's look for another pose. What I'll do is that I'll just use a circle for her skeleton, and I'll try to get counterbalance points to help me locate where each part of the body is going to be for the joint of the arms. This looks oversimplified, but this is actually what I started with, that helped me make good drawings, make good gesture drawings. I understand that she has a rib cage and that she has a pelvis. Yeah, sometimes I could use a square to represent my pelvis, sometimes I could use a circle. It doesn't really matter, it depends on how you're feeling about the drawing. You would see that when I actually start adding flesh, it becomes easier to add flesh to the drawing and give it the shape that I'm looking for within a very short period of time. I usually gather a couple of poses like this, and I'll simply use the skeletons. If it's running, I'll use these skeletons to draw. It just helps me break down things so easily. Even when I'm like drawing my comic, I just use this simple skeleton approach to do my drawings, and it's really helped me improve. And whenever I was stuck with a pose, something I was not happy with, it just helped me deconstruct it easily. That's how I approach gesture drawing. So whatever the figure is, I just have this simple skeleton shape that I use, and I use it, this armature, and I use it to attack any pose. And that is that's basically how I learned gesture drawing, how I started gesture drawing. I want to talk about some of the mistakes I made. The first mistake I made was the outline trap. The outline trap is when, let's say I'm doing a study of this dude over here. I'm ideally doing a gesture study of this guy over here, right? And I'm trying to get his pose, right? And instead of me just continuing in this sketch direction, like this, I just start outlining. I just trying to outline his body like this. Yeah, I start doing outline instead of focusing on the like his general movement, I start doing outlines like this. This just distracts you from, you know, the main purpose of, you know, your drawing. So, you know, just try to avoid. I know, like, I do it a lot. Like, to be fair, I know about this, so really I don't care. Whenever I'm doing a study like this and I'm breaking down his pose, right, when I'm done getting the initial pose, right, when I'm done getting the initial pose, yes, I do have the itch to, you know, make it look a bit more refined, because I really do enjoy drawing the muscles and shapes. So I won't do it for all. What I just do is that I try to apply like line weights to areas that, you know, like to really give it definition. That is what I do, to really give it definition and make it a bit more attractive in my eyes. So I won't do it for all the areas of his face, all the areas of his body, I mean, or all the areas of the figure I'm studying, but I'll just, you know, add this little line width here and there to just make it a bit more interesting, make the character a bit more interesting. So that is how I personally do it. And then I do add the muscles. I do like adding the muscles. So that's how that's one mistake you can avoid, so that instead of just focus on the sketch, you just draw the initial pose, and then, you know, you can add your hard lines after. When you are doing a gesture drawing, I fall victim to this a lot, even though I try to practice as much as possible, but I do overthink. I do overthink the drawing. For like a complex pose, right, involves things like foreshortenings. Let's say something like this, for instance, a complex pose like this. Instead of me to just try and just, you know, get the flow, or just walk with what I'm seeing. Of it, me just doing it and then moving on to the next thing, I could just over focus on the fact that probably I didn't get the hands correctly, or, you know, I'm worried about the angles, how how do I put it, I'm worried about how it looks generally, which shouldn't be what gesture drawing is all about. Gesture drawing is not about anatomical correctness. It's about trying to capture movement and the feel of the character. I'm basically drawing it now. You can see how shit I am at this. It's probably because I'm talking. I suck at talking and drawing at the same time. It is actually crap. Oh yeah, this is not gesture drawing, guys. This is wrong. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again, but this time I'm not going to talk, so that I will just concentrate on it. Just bear with me. Anyways, I'm just going to leave it like this. Usually I'll spend more time on it, but, you know, like I said, gesture drawing is all about getting the initial pose, and the more you practice, you know, the better you become. Of course, I could refine it, but, you know, let's just proceed with the video. You know, it's funny, I talked about overthinking, and I then overthought this art. So try not to be too precious about it. I personally am too precious about it, because I always want to draw the muscles and draw the curves, and, you know, I just like creating fun stuff. I don't like drawing things, leaving sketches as sketches. I like to take it a bit further usually. But if you're starting out, try not to overthink it. If you're starting out, try not to overthink it. And definitely, of course, I'm still learning. And these are things I battle with personally. I do overthink my own, and a lot of the times I do forget, and I just convert my entire gesture drawing session into a complete outline, and then inking, and then coloring, and then painting it. I just convert it into an entire illustration drawing session and ignore the gesture entirely. I do fall into that trap, but if you want to improve, just try to reduce your amount of overthinking and being too critical about the detail of what you're drawing. Even if it looks trash, like I know I did start over with this one, but it's still something I'm trying to improve on, obviously. So don't overthink, don't convert your entire sketch session into like an outline piece, and try not to be too precious about the quick sketch. It's a sketch at the end of the day. So some exercises that you could try to do is, you could try a 30-second challenge. So over here I have multiple different poses. Yeah, there's this site online called lineofaction.com where you could actually try and do different poses in however minutes. I personally don't work with seconds because I like to take my time and enjoy my drawing session. So I could, like the drawing I did today, the sketch I did today, it was an hour long sketch, right? And I just drew five figures, and in those 5 figures, at the back of my mind, I was 58 minutes, but I just rounded it off to 1 hour. But ideally, what I should have done was that I should have broken down. I would have done a lot more if I had broken down, and be conscious of time whenever I was working. But I just cared about my enjoyment the most, and at the back of my mind I did set a target of 5 minutes, but I didn't stick with it. But it was a sketch session. I employed some gesture and a bit of construction whenever I was drawing it, and I did detail this work. A bit, but at the back of my mind I had 5 minutes. So you can try 30-second challenge. If you're starting out, I would say that you should increase it a bit to maybe 1 minute or 1 to 3 minutes ideally. Probably 5 minutes. I would say 5 minutes. 5 minutes is what I still use whenever I'm trying to be very strict with myself and my time. 5 minutes is what I would suggest. 5 minutes, different sketches. Another exercise you can try is that whenever you are drawing a pose, you can try to exaggerate it. You can try to exaggerate the pose. So whenever you are taking a simple pose, like this that has an obvious movement, you can try to make it a bit more dynamic, because it can help to really understand the underlying energy of the pose. Another thing you can try is you can do gestures from life. I do remember when I was back in uni, what I usually did was that when I was bored in the class, my teacher would be teaching. One thing I usually did was that I did draw the pose of my teacher while he was teaching, my professor, I mean, while he or she was in class teaching. So it served at the back of my notes, at the back of my lecture notes, or at the back of the exercise book that I came with. So I did use that as something else to do while I was being bored out of my mind because of the lecture. So you could actually study from life. If you're out with friends or you're at a program or an occasion, you could just take out your sketchbook and just try to observe people around you and then sketch. I don't go out a lot, so I end up not doing this. At the end of the day, there are millions of poses online to achieve what I want, so I don't do this. But if you are an outdoorsy kind of person, you can try this out. Now you have the basics of drawing gesture, right? Whenever you are doing gesture drawing, do try to use the CSL principle, so that whenever you're drawing, whatever it is you're drawing, it becomes much more simple. I know this is looking like a trash drawing, but I have gotten the shape that I want to get in just a few seconds. Once you've got the basics of gesture drawing down, try and remember that it is a skill that develops with practice, right? You can see me stumbling here and there as I was drawing. Like, it wasn't exactly smooth sailing for me, and that's just because I'm not a master yet. There are people that actually do this much more smoothly. But about taking this further, just try to practice, man. Just try to practice. Do as much studies as possible whenever you can. I'm not like a strict kind of guy where I just force this strict timetable on myself, and whenever I don't follow it, I just become depressed and whatnot. No, whenever you're free, whenever you can, just know that the goal of gesture drawing is to improve your figure drawing, right? For someone like me, I like drawing comics, so doing this exercise really helps me, so that whenever there is a pose that I want to achieve and I don't have references for that, I could use this, my visual library, to just bring out an interesting pose that will be suitable for that comic panel or for whatever it is that I want to achieve. And then when I go back into detail, I can further refine that pose the way I want. So I'm just going to quickly use all the things that I've talked about and try to do some gesture drawings. Yeah, I'm going to try and do one of these exercises that I've mentioned, the 30-second challenge. So right out 30-second challenge, I'm going to do like 2 minutes or 5 minutes per walk challenge. At the end of the day, I'm going to post how long I spent on it. That took longer than it needed to take. Like I mentioned, you could try to exaggerate the pose. Exaggerate the pose. There's this art I saw in Love, Death and Robots that it really just looked like gesture drawing. The name of the episode was, is it Bad Boys or something but I don't really know the name. It's had something to do with boys though, and they were fighting these giant babies or giant baby characters, and it just showed there was just a lot of gesture in that particular art style. You could check it out. I just wish I could detail this some more. This one, yeah, what's his name? I'm a Ninja guy. Yeah. Right. I want you to take note of how I'm trying to apply the CSL, even though most of the times I'm actually feeling at it. But just if you're doing your own studies, just try and apply it. Yeah, so I think that would be the last one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 poses. Now guys, I want you to take action. Grab your sketchbooks and start practicing gesture drawing. Let me know in the comments below what your biggest takeaway from this video was, or if you have any questions, let me know. I want to take time to appreciate all the new and old subscribers. Thank you for tuning in. If you got value from this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Click on the notification bell to know when I drop a new video. Remember, it takes a long time to actually get good at anything. Be patient with yourself while still applying consistent effort. Keep drawing and stay creative, guys.